The bus stop on Madison Avenue was nearly empty at 9 on Christmas night. Most of the city had retreated indoors hours ago, gathered around trees and tables, surrounded by family and warmth. But Andrew Sterling sat alone on the cold bench, his expensive navy suit offering little protection against the December wind, a paper coffee cup cooling in his hand. At 42, Andrew was the founder and CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech company worth $3 billion. His face had been on the cover of Fortune magazine twice. He owned a penthouse that overlooked Central Park, drove cars that cost more than most people's houses, and had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. What he didn't have, what he traded away in pursuit of all that. Success was anyone to spend. Christmas with his parents had passed away years ago. His sister lived in London with her family and had stopped inviting him to visit after he'd canceled on her too many times, always because of work. His last relationship had ended 18 months ago when his girlfriend had finally accepted that she would always come second to his company. So Andrew had spent Christmas Day the way he spent most days in his office, working on a presentation, reviewing quarterly projections, planning the next acquisition. When he'd finally looked up from his laptop, it was dark outside, and he'd realized he'd forgotten to eat. He'd walked to the nearest place still open, gotten coffee and a sandwich he'd barely tasted, and now he was sitting at a bus stop because he couldn't face going back to his empty apartment just yet. The Christmas tree visible across the street glowed with white lights, mocking him with its beauty. Somewhere nearby he could hear laughter from a restaurant still serving late diners, the sounds of life, of connection, of everything he'd somehow lost along the way. "Excuse me, mister." The small voice startled Andrew out of his thoughts. He looked down to find a little boy standing in front of him, maybe 4 years old, with curly brown hair and wearing a red sweater that had seen better days. His jeans were worn at the knees and his shoes were scuffed, but his eyes were bright with that particular hopefulness that only children possess. "Yes," Andrew said, his voice rougher than intended from disuse. He hadn't spoken to anyone all day. The boy studied him with the frank assessment of childhood. "Are you sad? You look really sad." Andrew felt something catch in his chest. "I'm fine. Are you here alone? Where are your parents?" "My mom's inside." The boy pointed to a small convenience store a few doors down. "She's trying to see if they have any food left. We're hungry." He said this matter-of-factly without self-pity, just stating a truth. "I'm Charlie, by the way." "Andrew." He found himself shaking the small hand that was extended to him, surprised by the child's confident manner. Charlie sat down on the bench beside him, uninvited but somehow not unwelcome. "It's Christmas," he announced, as if Andrew might not be aware. "Did you get any presents?" "No," Andrew admitted. "Did you?" Charlie shook his head, and for the first time, his cheerful demeanor cracked slightly. "Mom said Santa forgot us again this year, but I think," he lowered his voice conspiratorially, "I think it's because we don't have a house right now. We've been staying at different places. Maybe Santa couldn't find us." The words hit Andrew like a physical blow. This child, this bright, hopeful little boy, was homeless on Christmas night, and he was trying to make sense of why he'd been forgotten. "Where have you been staying?" Andrew asked gently. "Sometimes at shelters, sometimes with Mom's friend, but she said we can't stay anymore because her boyfriend doesn't like kids." Charlie swung his legs too short to reach the ground. "Tonight, We're going to take the bus somewhere. Mom says she has a plan, but she's been crying a lot. She tries to hide it, but I know. Andrew felt something shifting inside him, something that had been frozen for years beginning to thaw. What's your mom's name? Jennifer. Jennifer Parker. She's really nice and she works really hard. She had a job at a restaurant, but they closed down 2 weeks ago, and now she's trying to find a new one. But it's hard because she has to take care of me. And Charlie stopped abruptly, as if realizing he'd said too much. Are you going to call the police? What? No, why would I call the police? Sometimes people do when they find out we don't have a home. They think Mom's a bad mom, but she's not. She's the best mom. We just had some bad luck. Andrew's throat tightened. I'm not going to call the police, Charlie, I promise. The boy relaxed visibly. Good, because Mom's trying really hard. She reads to me every night, even when she's tired, and she shares her food with me, even when there's not much, and she tells me that things are going to get better. We just have to keep trying. A woman emerged from the convenience store, and Andrew knew immediately it was Jennifer. She was young, maybe 30, with light brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a thin jacket that wasn't warm enough for the weather. She carried a small plastic bag and looked exhausted in a way that went bone deep. She spotted Charlie on the bench, and her expression shifted to alarm. She hurried over. Charlie, I told you to wait by the door. You can't just talk to strangers. She stopped when she saw Andrew, and he recognized the weariness in her eyes, the defensive stance of someone who'd learned to expect judgment. I'm sorry, Jennifer said quickly. My son didn't mean to bother you. He didn't bother me, Andrew said, standing. We were just talking. I'm Andrew. Jennifer. She didn't extend her hand, keeping both arms wrapped around the plastic bag as if it contained something precious. Come on, Charlie. The bus will be here soon. Where are you headed? Andrew asked. The question came out before he could think better of it, before the old Andrew, the one who kept his head down and minded his own business, could stop him. Jennifer hesitated. There's a 24-hour diner in Queens that lets people sit as long as they want if they order something. We'll stay there tonight, and tomorrow I have a lead on a room for rent. Andrew looked at this woman, exhausted, scared, but still standing, still fighting for her child, and he made a decision that would have shocked anyone who knew him. I have a better idea, he said. I have a guest room in my apartment, too. Actually, you and Charlie could stay there just for tonight, somewhere warm and safe where you can actually sleep. Jennifer's eyes widened, then narrowed with suspicion. I can't. We don't accept that kind of... I'm not suggesting anything inappropriate, Andrew said quickly, understanding her fear. Separate rooms, locks on the doors. He looked at Charlie, who was watching this exchange with hopeful eyes. I just can't send a child to spend Christmas night in a diner when I have empty rooms sitting unused. Please, no strings attached, just a safe place to sleep. Why would you do this? Jennifer asked, and Andrew heard the exhaustion in her voice, the bone tiredness of someone who'd been fighting too hard for too long. You don't know us, because your son asked me if I was sad, and I am. I've been sad for years, I think, but I buried it under work and success and telling myself that being alone was what I wanted. Andrew surprised himself with his honesty, and because it's Christmas and no one should spend it hungry and scared, And because he paused trying to articulate something he was only just beginning to understand, because I think maybe I needed someone to remind me what really matters. Jennifer stared at him, trying to read his intentions, trying to assess whether this was safe or dangerous. Charlie tugged on her jacket. Mom, I'm really cold and really tired. Can we please? The simple plea from her child decided it. Jennifer nodded slowly. Just tonight, and we'll leave first thing in the morning. That's fine, Andrew agreed. He gestured to a waiting taxi. My apartment is just a few blocks away. They rode in silence. Charlie pressed against his mother's side, occasionally sneaking glances at Andrew. Jennifer kept her arm around her son, protective and wary. Andrew found himself hoping his apartment wouldn't intimidate them, that they wouldn't feel uncomfortable in his world of luxury. The doorman greeted Andrew with surprise. Mr. Sterling almost never came in through the main entrance, and certainly never with guests, but he was professional enough not to comment, simply holding the door and wishing them a Merry Christmas. In the elevator, Charlie's eyes grew wide. We're going really high up. 28th floor, Andrew confirmed. There's a good view of the park. The apartment was exactly as Andrew had left it that morning. Pristine, impersonal, more like a hotel suite than a home. He saw Jennifer taking it in, saw her shoulders tense at the obvious wealth on display. I know it's a bit much, Andrew said. I'm not here often enough to make it feel like an actual home. It's beautiful, Jennifer said quietly. We'll be very careful. We won't break anything. I'm not worried about that. Andrew showed them to the guest rooms, 2 bedrooms side by side, each with its own bathroom. He grabbed fresh towels, found some of his own clothes that Jennifer could sleep in. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourselves to anything. I'll be down the hall if you need anything. Charlie was already exploring his room, delighted by the soft bed and the view of the city lights. Jennifer stood in the hallway looking overwhelmed. Thank you, she said, and her voice cracked. You have no idea what this means, to have somewhere safe, somewhere warm. I've been so scared, trying to keep it together for Charlie, but I've been terrified. How long have you been homeless? Andrew asked gently. 3 weeks. I lost my job, couldn't make rent. I had some savings, but it ran out faster than I expected. Everything costs more than you think it will when you're living moment to moment. She wiped at her eyes. I'm a good worker. I just need someone to give me a chance. But when you show up to interviews looking tired and desperate, people can tell. They pass you over. What kind of work do you do? Anything, really. I was a waitress at the restaurant that closed. Before that, I did administrative work. I have some college, but I had to drop out when I got pregnant with Charlie. His father left before he was born. She looked down. I'm not making excuses. Life got hard, and I've been trying to climb back up, but the ground keeps shifting. Andrew thought about his own life, how he'd started with advantages. Jennifer had never had a college education fully paid for, parents who'd given him seed money for his first business, a safety net that meant his mistakes never destroyed him. What if I could help? He found himself saying, not just tonight. Really help? Jennifer looked at him wearily. I told you I'm not asking for anything, Andrew interrupted. I run a company. We have positions open, and even if we don't have something that fits your skills, I know people who are always hiring. Let me make some calls tomorrow. Let me help you find real work, stable work. Why? Jennifer asked again. "Why are you doing this?" Andrew looked at Charlie, now sitting on his bed and looking at the city through the window with wonder. He thought about how that little boy had asked if he was sad, had seen something Andrew had been hiding from himself. "Because I've spent 15 years building a company and forgetting to build a life, because I have more money than I could ever spend. But I was sitting at a bus stop on Christmas night, feeling more alone than I have ever felt, because your son reminded me that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with." He met Jennifer's eyes. "And because maybe helping you find your footing again will help me find mine." Jennifer didn't sleep much that night. The bed was too comfortable, the room too quiet, the safety too unfamiliar after weeks of hypervigilance. But Charlie slept deeply, peacefully, and that was everything. The next morning, Andrew made breakfast. Nothing fancy, just scrambled eggs and toast, but it was hot and plentiful. They ate together at his dining table, and Andrew found himself enjoying the simple act of sharing a meal with other people. He made his calls while Jennifer and Charlie watched television. By noon, he'd set up 3 job interviews for her, including one with his own company's HR department. He'd also contacted a friend who ran affordable housing programs and had leads on apartments that Jennifer could actually afford. "You didn't have to do all this," Jennifer said when he told her. Tears were streaming down her face. "This is too much." "It's not too much. It's barely anything considering what I have." Andrew felt something he hadn't felt in years, purpose that went beyond profit margins and market share. "Take the interviews, see what works, and until you find a place you and Charlie can stay here. I have the space. We can't impose. You're not imposing. Honestly, I like having you here. This apartment has felt like a mausoleum for years. You're bringing life to it." Jennifer did take the interviews. She got the job with Andrew's company, working in client relations, using her people skills and her natural warmth. The pay was good with benefits and stability. She and Charlie stayed in Andrew's apartment for 2 months while she saved for a deposit on a place of her own. But even after Jennifer found an apartment modest but clean and safe in a good neighborhood near Charlie's new school, they stayed connected. Andrew found himself joining them for dinners, for trips to the park, for movie nights. He taught Charlie to play chess and helped Jennifer navigate the complexities of her new career. And slowly, carefully, he and Jennifer developed something deeper, a friendship that gradually became more built on mutual respect and understanding. A year after that Christmas night at the bus stop, Andrew asked Jennifer and Charlie to move back into his apartment, not as guests, but as family. "I know this is fast," he said, "and I know you're independent and don't need me financially, but I need you, both of you. You've taught me what it means to really live, to care about something beyond work. You've made me remember what it feels like to come home to people who care about you, not what you can do for them." Jennifer said yes, because she'd learned something too, that accepting help wasn't weakness, that sometimes the people who seem to have everything are actually missing what matters most, that love could grow in unexpected places if you were brave enough to let it. They were married that spring. Charlie was the ring bearer, solemn and proud in his little suit. At the reception, Andrew told the story of how they'd met, of sitting at a bus stop, feeling more alone than he'd ever felt, and a little boy asking if he was sad. Charlie saw something I'd been hiding from everyone, including myself. Andrew said he saw that success and wealth had left me empty, and he and Jennifer taught me that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or stock portfolios. It's measured in connection, in purpose, in having people who matter to you and letting yourself matter to them. He looked at Charlie, now 5 and thriving, no longer worried about where his next meal would come from or where he'd sleep at night. You told me Santa forgot you, but I believe Santa sent you to me. I was the one who had truly been forgotten by the world and by myself. You reminded me what it means to be human again. Andrew never regretted the empire he built, but he learned to build something far more precious, a home filled with genuine laughter and a life that extended beyond boardroom meetings and profit margins. He established a foundation dedicated to homeless families, offering not just a roof, but the career training and childcare needed to break the cycle of poverty forever. Jennifer led the mission, using her own survival to design programs that actually change lives. Every Christmas, they returned to that same bench on Madison Avenue, bringing warm coffee and food for those waiting in the cold. They speak to people, truly see them, recognizing their humanity rather than seeing them as problems to be ignored. Andrew realized we are all just one misfortune away from that bench, one crisis away from needing a hand, one moment away from being the stranger everyone walks past. He learned that those who seem to have everything are often the most isolated, trapped by their own success and forgotten in their own way. Mom said, "Santa forgot us again," Charlie had whispered that night. But the truth was deeper. Santa hadn't forgotten the boy, but the world had forgotten people like Jennifer, hard workers who hit bad luck and deserved dignity rather than judgment. And the world had forgotten people like Andrew, too, men surrounded by luxury but starving for a real connection. It took a child's simple question, "Are you sad?" to shatter the walls Andrew had built. It reminded him that being human means feeling, connecting, and caring about something more than achievement. Thank you, Charlie, for seeing what everyone else missed, for being brave enough to talk to a lonely stranger, and for proving that Christmas isn't about the tree or the gifts, it's about building something meaningful together. Thank you, Jennifer, for teaching Andrew that vulnerability is a strength and for showing him how to fight for those you love. And thank you, Andrew, for choosing connection over isolation and using your success to build something real. May we all have the courage to ask, "Are you sad?" when we see someone sitting alone. May we be humble enough to admit when the answer is yes. We must remember that the greatest gift isn't found in a store or wrapped in ribbon. It is the gift of truly seeing one another and choosing to care. That is the heartbeat of Christmas. That is the definition of love. That is what it means to be human. Everything else is just detail. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about the beauty of the human spirit.